Did you look at that video I sent you last night?
No, I didn't.
Did you know, Brad, that researchers have trained people to use a robotic extra thumb? Where would you put an extra thumb?
I just looked at this picture.
Yeah.
And in between fits of revulsion.
Yeah.
I guess I have to say that where they put it seems pretty sensible.
I mean, it would be cool to have two thumbs.
It's opposed to the other thumb.
Yeah.
It is literally, I mean, people talk like humans evolved an opposable thumb, but they didn't evolve two opposable thumbs that oppose each other, which is exactly what this mechanical thumb is doing.
I wonder if you can like pinky and ring finger and hit the two thumbs so you can pick up two things at once.
Oh, this looks bad.
I think it looks cool.
There's a grotesque symmetry to this hand. Like literally, I mean, we'll put this in the show notes. Like the mechanical thumb is literally extending out of the other side of the hand opposite the thumb, so that there are thumbs on both sides of the hand.
Yeah,
like it is a symmetrical hand. This should not exist.
It's thumb, pointy finger, rude finger, ring finger, pinky, robot thumb.
Yes.
I'm into it.
I don't know if I should click play or not here.
You should click play. It's way worse when you watch the video.
Oh, it's very floppy.
Look, it's a cheap robot.
Look at that thing flop around.
Yeah. Look at the woman. Have you gotten to the part where the woman grabs the stuff?
It's a 3D printed thumb.
Yeah. If you had a 3D printer, you could have an extra thumb too.
What is it being controlled with? Sound is off. What are they controlling it with? Wait, you're not serious.
I'm serious. That thing on her wrist is tracking nerve impulses at her hand, so she learns to use it using. Yeah.
Wait, I'm sorry. Does the fake thumb literally mirror the real thumb?
No. You can control the fake thumb independently.
This is horrific.
It's super cool.
I can't look at this anymore.
Watch this. Watch the block. Have you gotten to the blocks where she picks up the blocks with her fake thumb and the real finger?
Dude, this guy is playing a guitar with 6 fingers.
Uh-huh. This woman's playing Jenga, two things at a time.
This is not the kind of transhumanism that I signed up for.
I would have what if, hold on. How many thumbs is too many thumbs? That's the real question.
These are questions that humans were not meant to answer.
What if you could have like 10 thumbs?
We have to stop this right now.
Thumbs, everywhere there's thumbs. I want an extra thumb. Welcome to Brad and Will Made a Tech Pod. I'm Will.
I'm Brad. What's up, Will?
Not much, man. What about you? Hey, I noticed you got a new chair.
I did get a new chair. We were supposed to talk about my new chair for the cold open, and then you whipped out this god-awful mechanical...
Look, right now I'm looking at the picture behind you of the old chair now.
Oh, no.
And it looks so sad.
Why did you bring that up?
Well, you're the one who stuck the free sign on it. It's in your house still, man. Have some dignity.
Look, I haven't quite committed to putting it on the sidewalk yet.
You're still attached.
I put the free sign on it to open the door, the metaphorical door, not my literal front door, although that will happen later.
That's phase 1 of letting things go.
I have started mentally psyching myself up to get rid of this chair that I've had since I moved to San Francisco in 2003.
Okay, so I have an alternative to the free sign on the curb.
Okay.
Here's what I'm suggesting.
Go on.
Look, you are newly unemployed.
Mm-hmm.
So there's nothing holding you back from making some spectacularly bad decisions, is what I'm saying.
Okay.
You have some roller blade casters on that bad boy, as I understand?
I took those off.
Oh.
Those are on the good chair now.
Okay. Phase 1, take the rollerblade casters back off the good chair and put them on the old chair. Phase 2,
oh no,
go to a very tall hill in San Francisco. Phase 3, maybe borrow a helmet from someone. Maybe it's optional.
Okay.
Phase 4, science.
I've been thinking about the classic question about snowboarding in San Francisco. The what if it snowed?
Yeah, it would be awesome.
I've been thinking about that for way too long.
Yeah.
To possibly entertain this idea.
Okay.
I'm not riding a chair down I'm not taking this chair to Lombard Street. Okay.
I have a new phase 1. New phase 1 is get disability insurance. Okay. New phase 2.
Now we're talking.
Rollerblade wheels. New phase 3, helmet, ? New phase 4, excitement and adventure, really wild stuff.
Okay. I don't do anything without a net.
Yeah, no, you got to have that safety net.
Physical or insurance, at least. This chair will probably go out tomorrow. I'm just going to say that now. If I say it on this podcast,
Oh boy.
this podcast will be up tomorrow morning, and then I have no choice but to put the chair out.
People will ask. They'll be like, hey, where's your chair, Brad?
Yes, people on the Discord are absolutely going to ask if I put this chair on the side.
Where are your chairs?
Also, just to be clear, every piece of furniture I've ever put on the sidewalk has disappeared in 20 minutes, just so people don't think I am like dumping literal junk out on the sidewalk.
So the San Francisco chair gremlins come fast, man.
This is a long-standing San Francisco tradition to put your old furniture on the sidewalk because it goes immediately.
I got like a little like nook, like a shelf nook, like a, like a 2-shelf nook off the sidewalk one time. It was great. I used it for a really long time.
Did you have to clean it up? Some of that stuff out there seems like it needs a good hosing down occasionally.
You use the bleach, dude.
Like the one thing you would not want to pick up off the sidewalk here is a mattress, which you do see.
Oh God.
From time to time.
Do you think people really get those?
Somebody probably does. Somebody could use just about everything,
Well, we need a new mattress for the orgy room. So
this chair has I've gotten the good out of it, they would say back home, but I think somebody could still get some more use out of it. So out it goes.
Yeah. Put those rollerblade wheels back on there and have an adventure.
Yeah. Yes.
But search the disability insurance, probably.
Yeah.
What are we talking about today, Brad?
Your new car?
Oh, I got an electric car.
I guess that's the jumping off point for this episode, at least, is your new car.
This also originally started as a cold open because my car texts me, which is weird. I've never had a car that texts me before.
Wait, what do you mean? You gave your car a phone already? Most people wait till their cars are like 7 or 8 before they get their first phone, but only a
3rd grade.
Only a flip phone. Don't give your car a smartphone until they're old enough to handle it. Why does your car text you?
Third grade is the year for phones for kids.
Is that the standard?
We made a compact with our daughter's friends when we entered kindergarten that it was going to be 3rd grade at least.
Wait, you talked to their parents? You all decided communally?
We had like before the first week of school, all of the parents got together and we brought the kids to a playground so they could hang out and meet each other so they would have friends on like first day of kindergarten. And the parents were all standing around talking to each other. And that was I was like, hey, how do we all feel about phones?
Is that the new talk? Is that the modern version of the talk? When do they get a phone?
Fucking many talks now. Like, hey, this is why, how I won't let you watch YouTube unsupervised? This is why. That's one of the talks. Mm-hmm. There's so your favorite influencer turned out to be a white supremacist talk.
Yes. There's the no, honey, vaccines are perfectly safe talk.
No, sweetheart, the person who made Minecraft and Harry Potter are both shitheels talk.
And
I'm looking forward to this Hex talk at this point, to be honest. Like, I'll be like, yeah, look, when people love each other, like that shit's easy. I feel like large part of our problems of our generation have is because we didn't talk about shit like sex.
That's true. That's true. God bless today's children. That's quite a bit more complicated than we had.
Yeah. But no, Gina and I got a Bolt a month ago now, a month and change ago. Because we wanted a new car and we didn't want to buy gas cars anymore.
Hang on, I'm gonna guess who makes the Bolt. Don't tell me
who makes the Bolt.
My first guess was Nissan, but I don't think that's right.
Nope. They go with environmentally friendly sounding names like Leaf and Xterra.
Do they still like the Leaf? We'll talk about the Leaf here in a little bit.
We will.
Oh, it's not a Honda.
Nope.
Is it cheating to ask the country?
All cars are made in all countries now, Brad.
Or, the country of origin of the parent company.
America.
Oh, well, that narrows it down quite a bit.
Yep.
Okay, Ford Bolt, Chevy Bolt, Chevy Bolt.
Chevy Bolt. There you go.
Got it. Nailed it in
6.
Got it in 4.
So we got a Bolt, and we'll talk about why we chose a Bolt in a minute, I guess. But before we started this, you said, hey, can we talk about how gas cars work a little bit?
Yeah. Yes, I have a vague notion of engine to drivetrain to axle to wheels, but that's about it. Also, before we get into it, I did look back in the annals of this podcast, which now are quite long.
Yeah.
We did do a self-driving car episode.
Early.
Long about episode 10 or so apologies if we repeat anything here.
It's funny. Like, I equate electric cars and self-driving cars in my head, I think mostly because of Tesla and their insistence on calling their like driver assistance package autopilot, which it kind of is in the literal sense, but is not in the figurative sense that everybody thinks autopilot means.
Yeah.
We don't need to get back onto that, but yeah, so we're going to talk about we're gonna try to do an overview of electric cars here, like with some experiences that I've had with hands-on time, like the good and the bad of the electric car, how it compares to gas cars. Probably a brief interlude about thermodynamics.
Always fun.
Efficiency, always good.
Some light weekend listening.
And then, something to listen to while you're mowing your lawn with your gas combustion 2-stroke engine.
Oh, do they have electric lawnmowers yet?
I have an electric lawnmower.
Oh,
it's the best thing. I mean, I bet. Like it's not as loud. I do have to deal with the cord because I didn't spring for the battery powered one. But it rips. It's so good compared to the gas lawnmower or I had a manual push lawnmower because we have a baby lawn, but the gas one's the electric one's strong. Anyway, but let's start at the beginning with the thing that was invented in the late 1800s by probably some German guy. I don't know. I wasn't really paying. I didn't look at this part of the thing.
Hans motor car. Yeah. created the first combustion engine in 1870.
It was a Mercedes gas combustion. Was his name. Okay, so the engine in a normal gas powered ICE, we'll call it, an internal combustion engine. Car.
Is that a common acronym?
That is a common acronym in the scene, in the EV scene.
Okay.
So ICE is the traditional acronym.
Do they say it with a sneer? Like as soon as you put that in context, I started thinking about who would say that and how they would say it.
Every time I drive by a gas station now, Brad, I look at it and I point out to the child and I'm like, look, that's the thing we used to have to go to. We still have a gas car in the driveway too. So it's not like we don't go there ever anymore.
Check out those filthy icers.
Yeah, exactly. So, okay. A normal car, it takes gas. It pumps the gas into the engine with a fuel. The fuel pump moves the gas to the engine. There's these things called injectors that sit on top of. Step back. There's a bunch of different kinds of engines in the world. There's Wankel rotaries. We'll link this Lego video in the show notes that makes Lego demos of a bunch of different styles of engine. But the most common thing that you see in most cars that you would see on the road use either a 4-cylinder, 6-cylinder, and 8-cylinder engine. And those come in different configurations. Sometimes all the cylinders are in a line. Sometimes they're in a V space. And those are basically just like space saving measures. They have an impact on like torque and stuff that's generated, but we don't have to worry about that for the purposes of this conversation.
Is that why you'll hear about a V8 or those V-shaped ones? Okay.
Yeah. All a V8 means is that the pistons are on the two lines of a V versus being straight up and down in the car. So like a lot of times in the 80s and 90s, you would see front wheel drive cars with a inline 6, or Jeep used to use inline 6s for their 4-wheel drive cars. And they would, the motor would just be sideways so that the drivetrain like is parallel with the axle in some of those cars. Okay. So you have these pistons. They're big cylinders with a piston inside, and the piston is just a smaller cylinder that slides up and down with no space.
Right.
Those are attached to levers on the bottom. And what happens is the fuel pump and the injectors squirt a little bit of gas and a little bit of air in the right mixture and ratio into the top of that engine. And then mechanical forces push the piston up. A spark plug ignites the gas.
That's what a spark plug is for. I probably should have put that together at some point.
The gas explodes, and the force of that explosion pushes the piston back down, and that transfers energy to the crankshaft.
I've always found it very amusing that the term explode is used to describe this action. I mean, I know that is literally in a technical sense what's happening. Like it's kind of the same way that like the Saturn V is technically just a controlled huge explosion, right? Like it's kind of the same principle, right? Like you were just harnessing the power of petrochemical explosions, right?
Yeah, you're like every time. So okay, on an internal combustion engine, like a 4-stroke, most car engines are 4-stroke motors. So that means there's 4 ups and downs of the piston each cycle, and only one of those is the explosion. So the other ones are pulling gas into the chamber, compressing the chamber so that it's ready to explode, the explosion, and then venting the bad gas back out of the chamber on the next stroke. So the gas explodes, it pushes the cams up and down, pushes the cam down. At the same time, the next cylinder is pushing up, right? So the cylinders are running there's 4 ups and downs for each cylinder per cycle, and they all run cattywampus with each other so that at some point on each stroke, one of them is pushing down and the others are doing one's pushing down, one's pushing up and venting, one's pushing down and sucking air in and gas in, and one's pushing up to compress the air and gas mixture. That applies power to the drivetrain. The crankshaft, the drivetrain goes into the transmission. The crankshaft goes into the transmission, and then the transmission has a series of gears that turn a relatively small number of rotations into faster or slower rotations, depending on what you want to do. Like if you're a pickup truck, then you might want a lot of torque to the back end, so you can pull heavy loads, and that means that you'll turn. It's basically using gears and ratios.
I'm just about to say
spins into power. Yeah,
much like with the spark plug, I'm sitting here going, "Oh, that's why they call it a gear shift."
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so like if you have a manual transmission car, you're literally pushing in the clutch, and you move the stick around, and that changes the gears. That changes which set of gears are connected to which other set of gears in that big complicated transmission. There's also a differential at the back end of the car that changes can further reduce the gearing or increase it. I can't remember. But the upshot is, gas explodes, pushes some levers, pushes some pistons down. Those pistons turn a crank. The crank goes into a transmission. The transmission goes into a differential, and then the wheels turn on the pavement. And there's a bunch of other stuff too. Like there's brakes, there's cooling, there's an alternator which hooks into this whole thing, and it like there's all those belts in the front, and those do like run things like the big fan that cools off all the water, that cools the engine block. There's those also hook into the alternator, which generates electricity that the car uses to like make the spark plugs work and recharge the battery and run the radio and the air conditioner and all the stuff that uses electricity in your car. There's power steering and climate control and all that stuff too, which are all these separate systems that all tie into the thing. But and there's a flywheel, which I think its whole purpose is to absorb vibrations so that it like I don't understand what a flywheel does. It's confusing. Anyway,
fair. Also, and also all very computerized. A lot of it runs on Linux these days. Not to go off on a tangent here, but like like you hear about these car plants being mothballed because they can't get enough computer chips to complete the cars that they're trying to make, right?
Well, and like there's sensors at all different places along the things that are off in solid state now. So like there will be sensors coming out of the exhaust that look for hydrocarbons or high oxygen levels or high carbon monoxide levels or whatever. And from that, they can infer like the state of the injectors and things like that. So like, for example, the injectors are controlled by computers now. So they know how much air is being sucked into the pistons. So they know how much gas to squirt in there to get the optimal explosion for either fuel efficiency or power or whatever.
Right.
Diesel cars are a little bit different. They don't have spark plugs. The gas just ignites based on compression. So it just works itself out. And then is diesel a more combustible fuel? Is that the difference? Diesel has more energy, but is less likely to explode. It requires pressure to explode, is my understanding.
Okay. I'm sorry. Let me jump in real fast.
Yeah.
Last thing, just because I've been living in the Linux world a lot lately and researching stuff.
You going to talk about SAE?
What is that?
They're one of the vendors that does a lot of that stuff. Okay. They do standards for like computers and cars and all sorts of stuff in cars.
The only reason I bring that up is that so many cars are running Linux now that there is literally something called the Automotive Linux Summit that just took place in Tokyo like a couple months ago. They literally have a trade show for Linux running on cars at this point. That's how computerized all that stuff is.
That sounds awesome. I would love to go to that.
That's a weird confluence of things. But anyway, sorry, we're more here to talk about mechanical stuff than computer stuff.
Yeah, well, and I want to I've learned some stuff that I hadn't really heard people talk about electric cars in the process of driving one for a month now. I guess so. The big takeaways here are that gas engines are not particularly like, even after 120 years of active development and like 50 years of really trying hard to make them efficient, they're still mechanically, like in a thermodynamic sense, not particularly efficient.
Yeah, you wrote this stat down in the notes here that blew my mind. I'll let you say it, but like the number on this for the efficiency, the thermodynamic efficiency is like shockingly low.
Yeah. So, okay, well, first we should talk about what that is. And in this case, efficiency is This is complicated because it doesn't actually tell the whole story, and we're not exactly comparing apples to apples when we're talking about gas to electric, because gas is a product that's refined from a natural resource, and as a result, it's not like it's pretty like turning oil from the ground into gasoline that burns in a car is a relatively efficient process. At the same time, electricity that you put into an electric car is a tertiary or quaternary product of the electrical grid. So that means the process for that is that somebody has to mine coal or collect natural gas or fuel oil. They have to transmit that to a power plant. The power plant burns it. That's then converted and stepped up and down all over the way and transmitted through the electrical grid. And then it comes out at your house. And obviously there's in-betweens, like if you're someplace that primarily does wind or hydropower, it's a different process. And how your power is generated affects the efficiency of your electric car, which is like conceptually fascinating. Like
the point is there are, what would you say, like second, third, and fourth order externalities to driving an electric car that people don't really think about. Like people fixate on the zero emission aspect and not so much on the like, where's the power coming from and what are the environmental costs of that, and et cetera.
Well, the zero emission aspect is really good in a local sense, right?
For sure. Yeah, it's
because it means you're putting less air pollution in the place that you live, which seems nice as the person who lives where I live, right?
Sure.
Like, but if your concern is, am I putting more carbon in the air than I'm, am I contributing to the global climate crisis? Then yeah, maybe an electric car is not going to do you that much good if you live in, say, Australia, where they still generate a lot of power with coal. Okay, so efficiency, and again, this isn't super apples to apples because primary power, secondary power, tertiary power, we're comparing across tiers. But a really good gas car today turns about 20 to 35% of the energy stored in the gas as a chemical. When it explodes the gas, it turns about 20 to 35% of that energy into propulsive motion.
Yes, that was the number that really jumped out at me. I mean, even after how many 100 and something years of making cars commercially, we're still only getting like a quarter to a third.
That's
of
really
the
good
energy efficiency.
That's really good for chemical to mechanical conversions, for what it's worth. Like a bulldozer is like 8% efficient.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Maybe I just lack the frame of reference here to realize that that's actually like not bad.
Yeah, it is. And two-stroke motors are, I want to say two-stroke motors are more efficient, but pollute way more because they don't as cleanly burn the gas. Like where a four-stroke motor has a couple of extra strokes in there that are for venting out the spent fuel and sucking in fresh, clean fuel. A two-stroke motor just keeps squirting in more air and gas in with the garbage. So that the carbon dioxide and carbon monoxide in the exhaust end up reducing the efficiency of the burn.
So there's always a trade-off somewhere.
Yeah, two-stroke motors are often on old like motorcycles and dirt bikes, but also famously leaf blowers, weed eaters, gas-powered lawnmowers are often two-stroke motors, like push mowers, not necessarily riding mowers. So with the gas, 20 to 35% efficiency in terms of chemical energy to mechanical energy in a gas-powered ICE engine car. The extra energy is lost as exhaust in heat. It's lost as heat of the motor block that is then exhausted with the cooling system. It's friction. It's all the other, like running the air conditioner, all the other things that happen in a car. The conversion of chemical energy stored in the battery to motive power is much, much more efficient in an electric car. It's like around 90%, depending on the batteries in the car and like the size of the car, the weight of the car, the transmission. Well, there's no transmission in an electric car. All that. We'll get to that in a minute.
So like there again is another math problem, right? Of like, generating the electricity may not be entirely clean, but you are getting much more out of that electricity in terms of motion than you would be from the gas, et cetera. Right. Like it's a very complicated comparison.
Well, and even if your worst case, your power from your grid is generated by coal plants, right? They still have like a coal power plant releases a ton of carbon dioxide, but they at least do scrub out the bad pollutants that cause like acid rain and stuff like that don't necessarily get pulled from car exhausts. So Like you're at least not putting sulfur dioxide and the various nitruses out into the air and stuff like that. Okay.
90%.
The other thing that's interesting about the using electric versus using ICE is that there are tertiary effects. So because you charge your car at night, typically, so typically what you do, most power companies incentivize this, I guess is the right way to say this. So PG&E, our power company here in Northern California, if you sign up for a electric car plan with them and you say, okay, I'm only going to, then they will give you a dramatically reduced rate at nighttime when demand is lowest. And the reason they do that is because the power grid, we've talked about this before, the power grid is instantaneous use. So when power is generated at, say, the Diablo Canyon nuclear power plant down south, then that power is immediately consumed by somebody on the grid. There's no storage mechanism for the most part in most grids around the world. That's starting to change a little bit. Like we're seeing some storage mechanisms in terms of like large battery banks. We're seeing some mechanical storage things where like people have two reservoirs and they'll pump water up to the top reservoir during the nighttime and it'll come down during the daytime. And the reason it makes sense to do that is you can't turn all the power plants on and off dynamically. So for example, if if the wind dies down and the wind generators slow down, your nuclear power plant's running, you can't turn those on and off easily. They have to spin up, say, a natural gas plant to cover the increased load. At the same time, if it's really windy in Tehachapi on Tuesday evening at 1 a.m., they can't turn the nuclear power plants off to reduce the amount of energy that they're putting out, the amount of power that they're putting out. So like the electric company has to balance that stuff constantly. And often the way they do it is by turning on and off natural gas powered plants constantly.
Which I assume, are just the easiest to bring up and down quickly.
Those are the ones you can bring up and down quickly. It does add wear and tear. And as my understanding is that there's some, like, depending on how quickly they have to spin up and down, there's cost associated with that in terms of like how much the power plant charges the provider and stuff like that. The other thing is that as we see more solar coming online, the solar is, the spikes in usage for most places are like mid-afternoon. So 3 p.m. to like 9 p.m., 10 p.m. at night when people start going to bed. And solar covers the first half of that, but it misses that, 6 p.m. to 9 p.m. as it's starting to go from dusk to nighttime. So you set your car to not charge during those peak times because they give you a higher rate then, and you get a lower rate from, say, midnight to 3 p.m. when people start turning on air conditioners. And as a result, I pay a fraction. My rate at midnight is a third what it was before I had the electric car now. And that means that, I fill up there and it saves PG&E money by having my car charged then because somebody is using the energy that they need to get rid of, or else they have to turn off the nuclear power plant, which costs a lot of money.
Yeah. And amazingly, by PG&E standards, they pass the savings along to you for once.
They used to pass the savings along a lot more. Now they pass it. They've changed the EV car rate plan a couple of years ago. So it used to be like fractions of a cent per kilowatt hour for electric vehicles. And now it's like half the normal rate instead of a tenth the normal rate.
All right.
But okay. So the upshot on all this for me as a customer is that I pay the equivalent of like 75 cents a gallon for gas.
Okay.
Like
all right.
The amount of energy required to drive my car 20 to 25 miles is like 75 cents.
Wow. That's like right there at the magic number. I distinctly remember when I started driving, gas in our area was about 74 cents a gallon or something.
Wow, really?
Which has always been the ideal in my mind of like, man, remember when it was like 3/4 a gallon?
I remember the first time it went above $1 and I was like, oh man, this sucks.
Yes, right. How things have
$5 a gallon.
So I don't know if you're ready to get into your kind of hands-on impressions just yet, but I did have one question about the overnight charging. And you made it sound like, does the car itself have a timer where you can just tell it when to accept a charge and when not? Because otherwise, like getting up at midnight to plug your car in does not sound appealing.
So every car is different. Depending on what your charging situation at home is, and we'll talk about this later with like the difference between the level chargers. Like the Bolt has, you tell the Bolt what your power, like what the power situation is at each location that you charge at. So for example, when I plug in at the house, it knows where I am because it has GPS, and it's like, oh, we're at home. You have this amount of amperage, and these are the times that power is inexpensive. And you can say like if you're at your office, you can say, okay, charge whenever I plug in. When you're at home, you say charge when the power is at the reduced rate.
That's very cool.
Yeah, it's good.
Also, how do they handle, I mean, maybe we're still getting ahead of ourselves here. How do they handle like public charging? Like you're not just getting free electricity, are you?
Sometimes you are. Yeah.
Wow.
But so, okay. So the other thing you can do on most self-driving most not self-driving, most electric cars is say, okay, I need to be fully charged by this time when I leave for work. And it'll make sure that you're charged by then if you at whatever rate it has to, like the minimum expensive rate, and then it'll do the cheaper rates.
Are we still in the territory of capacity and range on these cars that charging every night is critical for people? Like just for an around town kind of car for driving back to work or to work and back every day? Like, is that you're getting one day of this thing and then you have got to make sure you charge that night to be good the next day? Or
it depends on your commute. Like the Bolt is a 230-ish mile average range.
Okay. I
mean, that's a spectrum based on how you're driving, how heavy your foot is, and whether you're going uphill the whole way and stuff like that. But yeah, like we plug in basically once a week. But we also, I mean, it's pandemic time and we're not going to school every day. So like, I think we've driven 500 or 600 miles in the month that we've had the car, which is pretty low even for us.
Yeah.
Okay. So we talked about how gas engines work. We should talk about how electric motors work, because it's a little more straightforward. Basically, there's a big ass battery in the car, and then there's a couple of electric motors, which it turns out are the exact same as electric generators. It's just that, if you use the motor as a generator, then electricity comes out of the motor and into the batteries. And if you use the motor as a motor, then you have to when you apply current to the motor, it makes the axle turn.
Okay. And
when you don't, then power and the axle still turns when you're not applying power. Power goes back into the battery. Okay. There's more to it. Like there's voltage regulators and all sorts of stuff in that pipeline. And there's a lot of complexity in how the different electric car manufacturers apply this stuff. Like some of them are doing a traditional kind of axle with drivetrain. Some of them have motors at the wheels.
Interesting.
Like there's a lot.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of difference in battery technology as well. So like Gina and I chose to do a lease, A, because it was basically free. But B, because I'm not super confident in anybody's batteries outside of maybe Tesla at this point, because we haven't reached 10 years of Bolts at this point.
Right.
We've seen 10 years of Leafs. The 10-year-old Leafs are not in great shape at this point.
Ooh, okay.
Because they didn't, like, the batteries started out as 75 mile or 90 mile batteries.
Right.
And when you think about what your phone battery looks like after 1,500 charges, and it's down to 70% of its original capacity, that means your 70 mile Leaf is now like a 52 mile Leaf. And you've gone from, this is fine for my back and forth commute and like driving to the grocery store and stuff, to, oh, I got to plug in.
We should mention, to be fair, a 10-year-old Leaf is literally a first gen Leaf. I think it was December 2010 is when that debuted, and that was the first major manufacturer's electric vehicle. Like I guess the Tesla Roadster predated that, but Tesla obviously was a new company. So a 10-year-old Leaf is about the oldest commercial large scale electric vehicle on the road right now.
Yeah, and it was very much pitched as a driving around town for urbanites kind of car, like places where you're going to do low mileage, but lots of stop and go, stuff like that. So I was going to say, the neat thing about the idea that like power going into the same device makes it go, and power coming out of the, mechanical energy going into that same device generates electricity, is that you don't use brakes to brake. Like in an ICE car, when you mash the brakes, that is turning your physical momentum, your kinetic energy, into heat, right? There's no recuperating that. I mean, hybrid cars do recuperate that by putting that energy into the battery. But with an electric car, you do this thing called one pedal driving, which we'll talk about, where basically when you let off the gas, it starts slowing the car down, and that slowing the car down adds energy back into the battery.
Is that a huge adjustment?
It's a little weird.
That sounds very weird. I have not driven a car in probably 12 years, but that sounds very strange to me.
It took a minute. After a week, everybody was on board, and like Gina was stoked about it because it's kind of fun. You get to watch the little number go up and down to see how you're doing.
I mean, is there a brake pedal?
There is a brake pedal. Yeah.
Okay.
You still have the brakes for like if something runs out in front of you, you definitely slam on the brakes.
Okay,
you don't expect the regenerative braking to do its thing.
Yes. Okay. I'm just making sure.
But like the regenerative braking. So when I'm driving, usually I hit the brakes like twice a day. It seems like now.
Wow, that's wild.
Yeah.
I feel a little unsettled thinking about that. But
it's weird. It's an adjustment. I'm sure that people have accidents doing it all the time because it doesn't seem, and that's optional too. Like if you want to drive the car like a normal ass car, like the default D for driving, when you put the car into drive is it just works like a normal car and use the gas and the brake like normal. If you put it into what would be the L on an ICE car, which is like the low gear, no overdrive type thing, that's when you get into the one pedal territory.
Okay.
So the other thing about electrics is weight matters a ton since that's directly related to efficiency. So like BMW makes the i3 out of carbon fiber, which has some interesting costs if you get hit because it's not just like normal body work. You have to then get carbon fiber welded back on and it's a pain in the ass. The compartment under the hatchback in my car where like the temporary charger and all that stuff is stored is made out of like closed cell foam. It's like hard styrofoam. So it's super light and doesn't rattle. It's interesting. There's a lot going on.
Yeah.
Well, that was a pregnant pause.
Who's going to talk next?
You want to know what it's like to drive an electric car, Brad?
Sure. Why don't we get into it?
It's just like a normal car.
We have a lot of notes here, to be clear. This is a pretty information-dense episode. This is like 3 Google Docs pages of notes.
Well, there was a lot of stuff to not forget, and I wanted to make sure we didn't jack anything up because I know that the Tesla people will yell at us either way, so at least I wanted to have the facts right.
Let's just not say the word Tesla again this whole episode, and we should be fine.
Okay,
right?
fine.
Just very generically talk about EVs, and we should be fine. I guess I'll throw this out there. I'm sure we'll touch on it more later, but it's kind of a full circle sort of moment when you mentioned that the Leaf was pitched as a, like, you live in a city and you're just going to drive a little bit each day.
Mm-hmm.
Like, kind of, I think that the final thing that occasioned this episode is the electric Ford F-150, right? Like, kind of I know it's not the only pickup truck. Like, trust me, I come from the land of pickup trucks. I know people have their favorites and everything, but like, it is to me kind of the emblematic or stereotypical big,
it's the market leader.
The big beefy truck,
they sell $42 billion worth of those things a year.
Right. Like it is the big oversized pickup truck. So like the fact that there is an electric one of those coming now is sort of like, all right, electric vehicles are here.
It may not be the most technologically advanced or whatever. I think Ford partnered with Rivian or licensed stuff from Rivian for drivetrain or batteries or something. Honestly, it does that stuff I care less about than the fact that there's a pure electric option for the most popular car in America. That seems pretty good.
Yeah.
And not only that, but like, so one of the things that happens with electric cars, like they're mechanically a lot less complicated than ICE cars, right? There's no alternator. The alternator is just fundamentally part of the car, right? Like the thing that generates electricity from the motion is built in. You don't have to have as much cooling. You don't have to have fuel pumps. You don't have to have a lot of the stuff that wears out and breaks on ICE cars. Just like you don't have to have oil changes because the lube is like the electric motors are closed and don't require new lubrication. Right.
Like when you mentioned that some manufacturers are putting like small engines on each wheel, like it really opened my eyes to like, oh gosh, there are so many fewer requirements than you had in the past that you can get kind of weird with these designs, can't you?
That's exactly it. You don't because you don't use the brakes as much, you do have less wear on the brakes. So like I have friends who had Bolts for 3 or 4 years and are not even a quarter of the way through their first set of brake pads. Right. It's really the only thing it seems like that can go real bad on these is if you fuck up the battery somehow, in which case you're looking at probably totaling the car.
Really?
Because the cost of the battery is often worse than the cost of the resale.
They're really that expensive?
They
Holy
are.
crap.
It is 10 or 12 grand for a replacement battery usually.
Jeez.
Yeah.
That's
so
okay.
I mean, however, this is why I leased the car, right? Is because I didn't want to, I can't destroy the battery in 3 years. But B, I figure by the time I get done with this lease, we'll know how everybody's batteries are looking, and we'll have a better idea of what's the right choice to be. I feel like so. I joked about Tesla a minute ago. There's a couple of things Tesla, like none of this I think would have happened at this pace without Tesla, right? Like the thing that Musk did by making the luxury like the desirable / good / reviewed well luxury sedan, and coming out at the high end market and using the rich people cars to like expand logistics for battery development and stuff like that is incredible and really good. And the fact that it's coming down to more normal cars, and presumably they're going to have a $25,000 or $30,000 car before too long, is awesome. I think also because they've been doing this for longer than anybody else, their understanding of what makes batteries last is probably better than anybody else in the space. There's some things like there are some concerns with batteries. Like if you live someplace that gets very cold or very hot, you need to think about which cars have kind of climate control for the battery, stuff like that. If you have a closed garage, it's less of a concern. But like if you live in Wisconsin, your battery is going to be worse in the wintertime just because it gets cold and the chemicals do less work when they're cold.
Right. How's the battery health reporting in your experience? Do they expose that pretty clearly, or is that like you have to take it to the dealership to find out? Like they don't want you to know? It's
kind of like the phone.
Huh.
You know how your iPhone says, "Hey man, your battery's fine."
It's just a percentage. Yeah. It's like, your battery is 94%. Thanks, phone.
Yeah. It was like, I think I can get a kilowatt hour rating out of the battery still, but yeah, it's kind of the same. I guess it's amp hour. I don't know how the battery reporting works on the car in that regard, but it tells me how much energy is going in. I can go in the app on my phone and it'll tell me what my percentage is and what my estimated range is.
This is how long it's been since I dealt with cars like that. I just did another double take when you said the app for your car.
I've never had an app for my car before.
Like, this of course, there are apps for cars now. Of course, that exists. I just had not considered it. But the point is, they don't obfuscate that data. Like they are at least giving you a good enough sense of the condition of the battery, right?
Yeah, like I can look at this, and right now it says like I can get how much my efficiency is, which was like 3.8 miles per kilowatt hour over the 80 miles I've driven since it was last fully charged. Right.
Okay. Yeah.
I think if I dig in, I can get more information. Oh, shit. I just set off the alarm.
Did you just destroy your car?
No, it's fine. So like I get a diagnostic thing that basically says, "Hey, the battery's fine."
Okay.
And I think I can tap it. I can't tap into that. That kind of sucks.
I mean, I guess like at some point that's just kind of the oil change light situation, right? Of like, it will let you know if there's a problem.
Well, except for now the phone will text me and is like, "Hey man, if you want to be ready to go to work at 8:00 on Monday, you gotta plug in now."
I'm sure this is not actually the case, but I love imagining that your car literally starts its texts by saying, "Hey man."
I wish it did. That would be more fun. Let's see. What does it say? It's here we go. OnStar, your 2021 Bolt EV has completed charging. For help, call this phone number. Type text stop to cancel.
I want to be the person who defines the texting identity of a line of cars.
I would love that. That would be so much better.
I want to write the brand Bible, the like texting guidelines for the next electric vehicle.
You should be able to choose too. Like you should really, it's like choosing a Siri. Like I want
Australian lady Siri. I want Australian lady Volt to.
Yeah. Oi, mate. So, okay. What it's like, the one pedal driving is cool. Like the way it's, we've done a couple of long drives just to kind of go around and see places we hadn't been in a while. It's a little tiring if you're not stopping and going a lot. It's a little tiring because what ends up happening is you end up like with the pedal kind of partially depressed in a way that's a little bit unusual. So like if you're going and it's flat, you have to keep pressing down a little bit more than you would normally. There's no kind of coasting, right? You're either accelerating or you're decelerating, or you have the pedal pressed like 10% or 20% of the way in.
That makes sense.
This is going to sound weird, my calf muscles had to kind of toughen up a little bit.
Okay.
Because the first time we did like an hour and a half drive, my leg was freaking tired and I had to switch off of the one pedal mode for the back half of it.
Probably not the worst thing long term, right?
I mean, I don't want to get like one really ripped calf and one not ripped calf.
Is that like the electric vehicle equivalent of like tennis arm or something?
Maybe. Yeah, I hadn't thought about that. The range anxiety is the thing I was kind of worried about coming into this, because like, you know, it's not like you can just pull into the gas station in 3 minutes. You're filled up and ready to go more.
Right. Like there is 120 years worth of gas station infrastructure built up across the country versus like, I don't know what the charging infrastructure is like, but I'm sure it's pretty sparse.
Well, we have
by comparison
10 years worth of charging infrastructure in California. It's pretty good. There are multiple charge stations within about a mile of my house. Okay. In the suburbs. When you pull into like Target, there's free charging there.
Wow.
A lot of cities in San Mateo County where I live have municipal charging that is free or very inexpensive. Now, often it's not particularly fast. And we'll talk about that in a bit.
I was going to say, actually, maybe that's why they're lax about charging you for it, because you know the average amount of time somebody's likely to stay hooked up there, they're not going to consume that much. Probably.
Yeah, I mean, like the Target chargers, I don't know that we've used them yet, but it seems like they're fast enough to, in the time that I would be at a Target, probably put the amount of energy that I spent getting to Target back into the car, which is fine.
Yeah.
Using stuff in the car reduces range, like the radio and stuff doesn't make that much of an impact, but the air conditioner and the heat and heated seats do, for sure.
God, there's a lot to think about.
It's not a ton. It's like a 5% reduction, and the thing is, at least this car, the electric cars I've driven, which is the ones I've spent any appreciable time in, are like the Smart Car, the i3, and Teslas, but mostly the older ones, not the Model 3. They do a really good job of kind of like giving you a rolling average of how you're doing driving. So like, you know, if you are light on the accelerator and like this card gives you a moment by moment read of how much energy is leaving the battery at any given moment. So like you can tell, you literally see a number that goes up and gets in the yellow if you romp it off the line. If I hit the button on sport mode and accelerate fast enough that it pushes us back in the seats, I can watch the battery go down.
Wow.
Right. But you also see energy going back in as you're decelerating and as you're using the one pedal stuff to stop at stop signs and stuff like that. You know, we live in Pacifica, which is down a great big in a kind of valley in a cleft between the ocean and the mountains. And when we leave town, we are in the yellow every time because the car's yelling at us for using too much energy going up the big hill. And on the way back, it's always all green because we coast down that hill.
That's right. Just fast and loose. Since you're talking about all those readouts, what is your screen situation like in there?
There is one screen on the dash, and then there's like an AirPlay / dash entertainment screen that's like 9 inches. It's not one of the big stupid ones like in Teslas or whatever.
That sounds unobtrusive. Did you see this Mercedes tweet, which apparently has now been deleted? Actually, I
can't imagine why.
This Mercedes tweet going around this week. That may very well become this week's show art for people who haven't seen it.
It's the one with like 18 screens in it, and it looks like the person's going to kill everyone around them because they're going to be so distracted from driving.
It doesn't help that they gave it all this like purple and blue underlighting to make it look extra future. But yes, like this car is like nothing but screens inside.
This car has blue EL lighting that you can turn on and off around like the trim inside, which I'm not a huge fan of.
I mean, that's more energy. I mean, granted, LEDs take like next to no energy, but still, like
that's nothing. Yeah, but you can turn it off if you really care. But I just don't like the blue is bad for your night vision, I think. So
yes.
Let's see. We haven't had to use a fast charger yet. Like using L1 or L2 chargers, you can put we'll talk about that actually in a minute. But we haven't used the DC fast charge yet, which we did pay more for to get as an option. And that lets you use higher voltage and higher amperage to charge and like charge up 80% of the battery in a fraction of the time that you would take in a normal AC charging situation.
Is that something you can take with you? Like, what is that? Is that an attachment?
It's just a different plug. It's a like extra dongle on the, you know how like, remember how USB-C originally had that extra little hat on the connectors?
Yeah.
It's like that. It's just a little bit taller connector.
I see.
like the other thing about the little car. So the Bolt is a small car. I've never owned a car this size before. But it's really big inside because there's no motor. Like the amount of space devoted to making the car go is very small compared to the rest of the car.
I bet that means pretty good leg room.
Yeah, like the back seat, front seat, it's all spacious inside. There's not a ton of cargo space. But there is like, there's no spare tire because they're concerned about weight. So you have like run self-sealing tires basically. It's like there's a little hidden area underneath the back of like by default, the hatchback area is flat, but there's a little hidden area you can pull out if you want to put more stuff in. I was able to put 6 20-pound bags of dirt in the other day. No problem. So like it's not like a pickup truck, but it holds a fair amount of stuff. And you can fold the seats down if you want more. So.
Yeah. That is a lot of considerations to add to the driving experience, though. Like, you don't normally think about adding weight to the car being something you really need to think hard about. But
well, it's like they do a lot of stuff to make it manageable. So, for example, in the built-in, like you could, I think most people who drive electrics a lot probably have one of the apps that like with their charging provider of choice. So that if they have to charge while they're out on the reg, you just hit the button on the app and it tells you where the near one is and you go over and plug in, go have lunch or something. If you're going to places that you can top off on the reg as you go, like most Bay Area large workplaces have charging. And like if you go to Facebook or something for a meeting, there's charging valets. So you pull up, you give the guy your key and they'll plug you in for as long as until you're topped off. And then they'll move you into another space and put somebody else there. If those spaces are contested,
presumably it is a pretty rare situation nationwide.
You say that, but like you can drive. I think most of the interstate system is covered by Tesla superchargers at this point.
Oh. Huh.
There's EV2Go and Power USA or Power America or something. Like there are charging stations. Once you start looking for them, you see them all over the place.
Okay.
Like I can drive. I could drive to LA really easily and stop once probably. Wow. So,
okay.
And with 200 mile range, you don't have to stop that often. Like it's kind of turns out it's the amount of time you normally stop to get gas or whatever. It just takes a little bit longer. So, I guess, I don't know, charging next. What do you want to do?
Sure. Yeah.
They base the charging on levels. So there's L1, L2, and L3 charging. L1 is the slowest and L3 is the fastest. L3 and beyond, kind of.
Are these industry standard terms and ratings?
These are standard terms. The ratings vary based on the car. So
okay. That makes sense.
So on the charging front, you have two things that matter as to how fast you can charge: the power coming out of the wall, out of the plug, out of the cord, and the charger that's built into your car and how fast it can accommodate. So both, it's just like your phone. Like if your phone doesn't support quick charge, then it's not going to, like, doesn't matter what you plug it into. If your plug doesn't support the highest standard that your phone supports, it's not going to charge any faster than it goes. The L1 is 120 volt, and it's usually between 8 and 15 amps from a normal 120 volt socket. Usually they have to be grounded. So like you have to have your 3-prong ground fault plugs don't work if they're not grounded, even though that's up to code. And the plug for this and L2 are the same. It's called a J1772 plug. That's an industry standard now in the US.
The old J1772.
Yeah. It looks like a little gun with like 3 or 4 points in each. It's really easy to. My daughter loves plugging it. It's really fun.
My grandpappy passed his down to me.
Brad, it makes a real good clunk when you put it in there. It goes,
oh man. Chunk. Oh, I bet that's a fun plug.
And then the car usually beeps and it's like, yo, man, I'm charging. Or sometimes it says, this is delayed charging time. I'm not going to charge now because the power is too expensive. I know. I'm cool.
Man, your car has an attitude.
On that delayed charging stuff, sometimes your charging station is aware of that too. So like if you have an L2 charger, which is the thing we're going to talk about now, which is like, you see those, this is like the thing at Target. Lots of cities have put them in. It's usually 240 volts. They range from 16 to 40-ish amps. Same plug, but they're AC, so alternating current. And where the level 1 charger will do 40 or 50 miles of range per night, like from midnight to say 9 a.m., 8 a.m., the L2 will do about 25 miles an hour. So it's 4 to 8 times faster depending on the amperage that you have. You use, it's the same plug usually on the back end. Sometimes you hardwire them in. Sometimes it's the same plug as like an electric dryer or a heavy duty electric appliance. Electric stoves, electric ranges have the same thing. And like I said, 25 miles an hour. Usually if you're paying for charging when you're out, it's L2 or L3. Most of the time L1s that I've seen seem to be complimentary or very inexpensive. And then the L3 is the DC charging, and those are 480 to 1,000 volts depending on the vendor. And it typically you're looking at somewhere between 20 and 90 minutes to get to 80 or 90% of the battery.
Okay.
And it's the same thing as with phones. Like you can charge the middle portion of that charge fast, and then once you get to the end, you have to slow down and you'll tank the battery. So the cars have the chargers that know how, unlike the car charger knows not to destroy the battery even if you try to.
Yeah.
Like the car will turn off if you try to run it too low. The car won't let you overcharge it, stuff like that.
For 12 grand, I hope so.
Yeah, they're expensive. Now Tesla is the exception for all of this stuff. Tesla has their own plug on their car. They're using the lightning adapter. They're the lightning adapter of this world.
They're the Apple of cars.
Yeah, the adapters are mechanical only, I believe. I think there's like an electrical component, but it's like confirmation, like it's data, not necessarily signal or anything like that. So you can buy physical adapters that you like. I think Tesla's actually come with an adapter that lets you plug the J1772 into it.
Okay.
The DC standard is CCS in the US. There's a different one for Japan, I believe. But everybody that's shipping cars in the US now that have DC options is using CCS or their Tesla. And I don't know what the adapter situation is for Teslas to like other things. My understanding is that the Tesla supercharger network is supposed to become available to people who have the appropriate adapter in the US at some point in the not too distant future. I don't know what you need to do that. The neat thing about the Tesla stuff is you don't like, if I plug my car in, the authentication has to happen with my phone. So like I walk over to the dongle and I tap the NFC thing on the thing and it talks to the app and it's like, okay, I know who you are. Here's how much you're authorized for, go. And then it charges my credit card. With Tesla, it just knows that the car belongs to you and it charges you when you plug into the supercharger network. There are ways around that. If you like loan your car to somebody you want them to pay for the electricity, but it's like $10 to top off the car. So who cares? Like it's really inexpensive. And like I said, the DC charge speed depends on the charger and the car. Like my Bolt is only 50 watt charger. So that's the cap at how fast it can charge. So I think it's like 90 minutes to fill it up basically instead of 60 or 30. So that's like, it's weird. It's a change, but it hasn't been stressful yet. We haven't gone on any kind of long trips. We're going to drive up to Petaluma or something next week and I'll report back, I guess.
Okay. Yeah. Seems like LA. I mean, at least here, that's kind of the Widowmaker, right? Like that's a 6-hour drive, like straight through. So
yeah,
like
we would have to stop and eat, like have a hearty lunch at some point along the way, I think.
Right. Like a trip like that is going to be the real determining factor.
But like I would totally drive to like San Luis Obispo.
Sure.
And
just like
stop
what, 3 hours, something like that?
Yeah, it's like 3 hours. It's like halfway down the coast. Like stop and charge and have lunch halfway along the way, but like not have to sit down for an hour and a half, right? Just kind of top it off and then plug in when we got there and be fine.
Suddenly I just had a real like used future vision of the future gas station as the electric station, where it's like, like the Star Wars or Alien version of the future, where it's like everything is the same as it is now, except for the technology at the center of it.
Yeah.
Like it's still some greasy old, like, garage backwoods sort of gas station setting, except it's all plugs coming out of the ground.
But the thing is, the electric cars aren't greasy. There's no grease.
I know.
It's just, but it's weird. You open up the engine compartment and it looks like an RC car or something. It's ridiculous.
Right.
Because like there's no lube to break down and there's no lubricant that leaks. And it's just, it's a trip.
Yeah.
So the thing I'll say is there's a ton of differences between the different brands in terms of like efficiency, in terms of miles per kilowatt hour or per kilowatt. because the batteries, the drivetrains, it's all different. Like the size of the car is going to make a big difference. Like that, the Lightning has the Ford F-150 comes with these ridiculously huge batteries that'll do like 350 miles or something. And they weigh 1,000 pounds or 1,800 pounds or something like that. 1,800 pounds, not 18,000 pounds.
I was shocked the entry level cost of that thing. Granted, like this is like the absolute bare bones cheapest model you can get. Like you can kit it out, all day long, I'm sure, but it's like $39,900. It's under $40,000 for the base model, and
that's without the subsidies. So you get a ton of tax credits and subsidies and stuff like that, depending on the manufacturer and where they stand on where they are in their electric car adoption curve.
Interesting. I like when you said earlier that it was like practically free to lease this thing, I assumed it was just like pandemic has depressed their business enough that they're like giving them away, but I didn't even think about all the tax credits and stuff.
So yeah, there's a federal credit that is valid for the first, I think, several 100,000 cars. The people who've been making electric cars for longer, that no longer applies to. I think people who buy Fords this year are expected to get that, and then next year it'll probably go away. But like California incentivizes the living shit out of these cars. We got multiple. I mean, I didn't have a lot of income last year because of pandemic stuff, but we got multiple subsidies, and like the only thing, basically on the lease, if you work with somebody who knows how to do this, there's a site called Lease Hacker that explains this, and there are comparable sites for purchases, but the deals weren't quite as good for that. The upshot is in California, ICE car manufacturers have to sell a certain amount of electric cars every year, or else they have to pay more tariffs or more taxes on the gas cars. So like Chevrolet is incentivized to sell the living shit out of these Bolts so that they don't have to pay penalties on their truck sales. And as a result, we were looking at like $100 and change a month for a lease.
Wow.
On a really nice, like a decked out Bolt. So the upshot is that we're spending less on the lease, the insurance differences, and the electricity than we were spending on gas before.
That's a pretty good savings.
It's a pretty good savings.
That's a pretty good savings. Is that a good cue to segue into kind of a quick wrap up about like we pulled some just basic stats about where we're at with the penetration in the market of the stuff?
Yeah, I'm curious. I'm super curious actually.
Yeah, I went and just straight up Googled, like how many electric cars are out there. It's kind of lower than I expected, but maybe my expectations were inflated. At the end of 2020, there were 10.9 million electric cars worldwide. So just under 11 million globally.
That
doesn't sound like a lot.
It's not. I mean, yeah. I mean, it's the normal curve, right? Where we're getting to the part of the heel where it's going to turn up.
Okay, we're gonna hockey stick soon. You think?
I mean, the thing that the car people were saying is that if the F-150 takes off, that can be a part of the hockey, like that'll be responsible for a big chunk of a hockey stick. Yeah,
sure.
And like the way they pitch that thing isn't like, hey, this is like a normal truck, but it's nice for the environment. The way they pitched it was because of the benefits of the electric motors. This car rips for people who actually use their trucks.
They definitely know who they're marketing to with that.
Right. Like
they know their audience.
Like there was a Maddow segment on it the other night where she was like, look, they rolled this thing out by showing it pull a 1 million pound train.
Yeah.
And then also, by the way, if you live in Texas and your infrastructure collapses, you can power your refrigerator and your heater on this for a few days so you all don't freeze to death.
Yes, you're
anyway.
You're selling that truck to Tim the Toolman Taylor, right? Not environmentalists.
Well, like you can plug it has 120 volt AC on it, so you can plug in like a welding rig. It's nuts. Like,
I mean, that's cool. That is legitimately very cool.
Yeah, like it. There have been multiple times since I bought a house that I was like, man, it would be really convenient to have a pickup truck, but I don't want to have a pickup truck in the Bay Area because parking is a problem.
Yeah. Like
if they sold a Ranger equivalent that was electric like this, I would buy one of those in a heartbeat. That sounds awesome. Anyway,
that's pretty cool. So yeah, 11 million cars on the road, over 5 million of those are in China.
That's more than I expected.
Yeah, same. 1.77 million in the US. Germany is number 3 with a little over 500,000. I saw, this is just analyst predictions. This could be anything, but there are predictions floating around that they'll be up to like 145 million worldwide by 2030. So that would be the hockey stick for sure, right?
Yeah. So, I mean, it's the beginning part of it for sure.
Yeah.
So here's the question: is how many cars are in the U.S. total? Do we know? I'm looking for that right now.
Question.
It looks like in 2019 there were 276 million cars registered in the US, and obviously not all of those are being driven all the time, but like,
right.
So like, it's not an insignificant, it's not a single digit percentage yet, but we're getting there.
No,
0.5%.
Yes. Something like that. There's kind of been a little bit of movement around some state governments, some of the more progressive ones, like here in California, Newsom issued this executive order. When was this?
Last year or early
last year?
Time means nothing now.
Yes, indeed. Governor Newsom here in California issued, again, just an executive order. This is not actual legislation. That by 2035, all new vehicle sales in California have to be zero emission vehicles.
Have they required that state-owned cars are electric?
I didn't see anything to that effect, but I don't know. But also, that's just an executive order like that. If he gets successfully recalled and replaced, like the next governor could just rescind that on day one, right?
Yeah, immediately.
So that's not exactly binding. This made a lot of headlines, though. I don't know if you saw this going around like a month ago. Washington State, the legislature actually passed a bill. Like they were well on their way to passing a law in Washington that by 2030, all cars had to be either electric or hydrogen.
Ooh, I like that.
But Governor Inslee vetoed that bill.
People love Governor Inslee. They're real fans up there.
Are they?
No.
I don't keep up with Washington State politics. I mean, he was like one of the also ran presidential candidates.
Why did you veto it
last cycle?
Because
he cited because if you remember when he for the brief minute he was in the presidential race, like the environment was very much his pet issue.
Yeah,
I don't know if you remember that. Like zero emissions, climate change stuff was his thing. That was his platform. I guess there was some kind of road usage charge attached to this requirement. Like, is that a straight up tax? Like, is that what that is? Is that essentially, or is that tolls? Is that a per use? Like,
so, okay. Yeah. So here's what they're talking. Here's what this is about. Most road, not most, but a lot of road maintenance is funded by gasoline taxes right now. Because presumably if you're using it, that's why in the South, you often would see the gas pump that's the farm use pump. And then there's also the normal gas pump. The farm use one bypasses the road use taxes because that gas is to be used on farms only.
I see.
The gas, sometimes it's also shittier gas for like it's leaded gas or whatever. But for the most part, it's a tax thing. You're just not paying the tax on those pumps. The road use charges fund paving and road maintenance and stuff like that. And electric cars don't pay them for the most part.
Right.
So with less than 1% of cars on the road being electric, who cares? But as that number starts to increase, it's going to impact the revenue to the DOT and that stuff. And they have to figure out a solution for that. So one of them is road use charges that are like mileage based user fees, basically, so that you report how often, how many miles you drove that year, and then you pay a flat fee based on that. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know if he was actually philosophically opposed to this program or if he just thought he was going to get eviscerated politically for being a part of instituting something like that. It's hard to say.
I mean, it could be also that like he didn't like the mechanisms that they were using to collect the money.
That was sort of his stated reasoning was like, this is too important to get hung up in the process of trying to institute a program like this. Like, we can't attach this.
Oh, it seems like those things should be separate is what he's saying.
That's kind of what he was saying, but who knows what the real motivations are there.
Yeah.
Also, like these state level regulations, like, is this going to send people across state lines to buy cars, or is that very complicated buying a car out of state? I don't know.
I mean, look, in Tennessee, we lived on the state line, and I feel like if you got caught, trying to go across state lines to avoid paying sales tax or something, you'd probably be in trouble, but maybe not. Yeah. I don't know. I don't know. Like you're entitled to go get the best deal, right? Like,
right.
If that's complicated.
Like, I mean, the point is, I don't know how binding these regulations would actually be on a per state basis.
Like what benefit to we didn't sign anything that said, hey, we have to stay in California for the next 3 years when we got the deal with all the incentives from California to buy this electric car. So, or at least this electric car.
Yeah. Yeah. But, at least the point is there are some state governments that are dipping their toe in as far as starting to regulate this stuff, starting to force the issue.
Yeah.
But, looking at these analyst predictions, like maybe the market is just going to solve the problem itself if it just becomes appealing enough to people.
I mean, I think what'll happen, Utah has enacted a road use fee for alternative energy vehicles. There's a couple other states that have done something similar. Like the nice thing about the fuel tax is it's not really a mileage tax. It's more kind of an efficiency tax. Because like if you put your gas in a Prius and you're getting 50 miles to a gallon, you're effectively paying a lower rate per mile than somebody who's driving an Ford F350.
Right.
That's a heavier car and it's presumably doing more wear and tear on the roads for the same amount of gas. I don't know that like a per kilowatt hour charge is like, I don't know what the equitable way to do this is. So
it's not an easy problem to solve.
It is not an easy problem to solve.
Speaking of problems that are hard to solve.
Yeah. What else?
Recycling these batteries as they go out of service.
You just put them on top of you put them in a Ziploc bag on top of the recycling bin, and then they take them when they take the trash.
Somebody will just pick it up.
Yeah.
Who knows where it goes? Nobody knows. Yeah. The little bit I read, I pulled up an article from Science Magazine about this topic, and it really sounds, according to the researchers dealing with this problem, it really sounds like these batteries were not designed with recycling in mind at all.
Well, everybody uses different formulas, right?
Yeah. So like there are all kinds of problems around this. Like different manufacturers use different chemistry in their batteries, different layouts of the cells. Also, the way the cells are bound together is different across different manufacturers. A lot of them use like a very heavy duty glue to bind the cells. So like pulling the cells apart to recycle them is difficult. The upshot of all that is there's no real like one size fits all easy recycling process. Like it kind of varies by battery. Also, it's pretty risky. I think you probably know more about this than I do, but like piercing those cells is a big no-no.
I've seen BattleBots. I know how this works.
Right. So like cutting those cells apart again, when they're bound so tightly together, like just literally pulling them apart is risky because if you pierce the cell, it's like, you're letting toxic fumes out. There's the risk of fire. There's all kinds of problems there. Like
you have to do it in an environment without, I think, water vapor. Maybe I can't remember. Like the problem is it reacts with water and oxygen and some other stuff. Yeah.
So like one of the basic problems this article pointed out is that it's cheaper for manufacturers to just keep using new materials and making new batteries than it is to recycle them. And of course, as we all know, our friends, the corporations, are going to do whatever's cheapest.
No. Here's the way this works. First, we throw this stuff in the landfill. And then in like 30 years, when we're like, oh shit, we threw all this valuable stuff in the landfill, then we hire kids to mine it out of the landfill.
Oh, okay.
And first, we're basically when you throw something in the landfill, Brad, you're not polluting the environment.
No, you're just socking it away for later.
Yeah, you're making a future resource is the way to think about that.
Well, so actually, I mean, you're being flip here, but that was something this article pointed out was that a lot of the materials in these batteries are pretty rare and in a lot of cases controlled by a small number of countries. Like you hear about that stuff all the time, right?
I was going to say they're called rare earths, but they're not actually that rare. They're just they're difficult to get. Or they're
yes, and they're pretty concentrated in a small number of places, right?
Well,
I know there is a supply in the US, but
the problem is it's difficult to produce them without environmental impacts that we're not as keen on in the US.
Aha, I see.
So
that may also be part of it.
Yeah. So like a lot of them come from China, it turns out.
Okay.
Where they're a little more lackadaisical about their environmental processing of, potentially toxic metals and things like that.
Yes. I think South America, there's a decent quantity available as well. Is that right?
I feel like that's one of the other places. Yeah. We have the thing that happened with rare earth mining in the US is that it became less expensive than the material. It became more expensive than the materials were worth to produce them here. So we offshored all of that stuff to places where they didn't give a shit about whether they poisoned people, which is gross.
Yes.
But now we're paying attention to that in a new way, and we're starting to bring that stuff back online.
Yeah. The point they made, and it seems like a good point, is that, for whatever reasons, environmental, economic, whatever, those materials are not easy to come by. And so creating another stream of those by recycling them out of old batteries instead of having to continue mining them and all the impacts that go along with that is very worthwhile, even though it is definitely expensive and difficult at the moment.
Yeah. And like everything else in electronics, like the weird thing about electric cars is that the supply chain works more like electronics than traditional cars, which are mechanical and are like closer to steam engines or something than a phone, is that the supply chain stuff works in the same way. So, as there's more demand, the supply increases and the cost for each unit goes down as the supply increases, and so on and so forth until we race to the bottom and eventually we're buying $15 cars again. I don't think that's actually going to happen, but like the cost per kilowatt hour of battery has gone down dramatically in the last 10 years because the supply has gone up dramatically.
Yeah. Yeah. This stuff always moves forward. It just takes a while. It moves more slowly than you would like.
Yeah.
But like that article pointed out, you are starting to see some national governments start to regulate around this stuff and start to invest in R&D for battery recycling and stuff like that. So as these things penetrate the market, hopefully we will get there.
Yeah.
And hopefully all of our cars don't explode and kill everybody before then.
So are you talking? Yeah.
It's the last bullet point on this list.
I don't want my car to explode, Brad. Why would my car explode?
I mean, maybe don't drive it into a tree for starters.
Well, my car doesn't have my car's not self-driving, so it's all on me if I do that.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I can't help you there.
Are you talking about the Texas?
Yes. There was this, what you describe as a somewhat sensational report floating around. Gosh, what was this? Like 6 weeks as I wait for this page to load. Yeah, it was about 6 weeks ago.
So here is a really predictable pattern for, I'm going to sound like a Tesla guy now, and I apologize, but
okay.
There's a really predictable pattern for covering new technologies by local news sources. New thing, bad and scary. Local advertisers, who mostly are local car dealers who sell Ford and Chevrolet and Dodge and Toyota vehicles, are worried about this. Therefore, the local car explodes in fiery explosion. Let's make this sound like it's a real problem. This is somebody who crashed their car. The battery's ignited. It's one of a handful of electric car battery ignitions that happens every year.
Yeah, it's a Tesla. You should point out.
It's a Tesla. Yeah. I mean, probably they were doing something stupid with autopilot. Who knows? The thing about this is you have to look at the number of the explosions per 100,000 miles driven and kind of like do a per capita assessment of this. And it turns out, fewer cars on the road. So who knows how this will shake out when there's, when 25% of the cars on the road are electrics. But currently the number of catastrophic explosions for battery related issues versus number of catastrophic explosions for driving around with a bomb in the back of your car. I feel comfortable with my choices is all I'm going to say.
Within acceptable tolerance. Is that what you're saying?
I would say everything is working as intended. And I do not feel like I'm taking an incredible risk by driving around with lithium batteries underneath my driver's seat, more than I am by driving around with 20 gallons of gas in the back of the car.
Sure. So the thing that caught my eye about this story was not the fact that the car ignited. It was what happened in the aftermath. This is the quote from the story that really jumped out at me. Authorities said they used 32,000 gallons of water to extinguish the flames because the vehicle's batteries kept reigniting. Mm-hmm. At one point, deputies had to call Tesla to ask them how to put out the fire in the battery.
Yeah. So here's an interesting thought.
That was the part for me where like first responders did not know how to deal with this. That really stuck with me.
Yeah. So here, I don't want to suggest that the firefighters who poured water on a battery fire were yahoos who didn't know what they were doing, because that would be unjust and unkind of me. However, Holy shit, don't put water on battery fires. It's like, if you have a grease fire in your kitchen, what do you do to put it out, Brad?
Don't pour water on it.
Don't pour water on it. Yeah.
Smother it.
You smother it. Exactly.
Yes.
Same thing for lithium polymer battery fires. You do not pour water on them because it just makes the lithium reacts with the water and makes more fire.
It just makes the lithium angrier.
The lithium, it's like Nirvana said, lithium and fire don't go well. Lithium and water don't go well together.
Yes.
And yeah, anyway, just don't Jiminy Christmas. If you're a firefighter and you feel like you're going to be in a situation where there might be a battery fire, don't, just
Yes, much like with
no
much
water.
like with the much like with the recycling. Like this is all fairly new to people, and we will get there in time.
I mean, you would think this, but like I wouldn't have been surprised to see this story 10 years ago. But we've had electric cars driving around with these batteries for 10 years now, and the fact that there's a fire department someplace in the third biggest city in the country in Houston that doesn't know not to squirt water on the lithium batteries is incredible to me.
Yeah, I guess so. I mean, again, less than 2 million electric cars out of almost 300 million cars. That's still a pretty small spread.
This was also a crash that happened when there was nobody in the driver's seat because anyway. Yeah.
Let's not get into it.
I don't like, okay, just to be clear, those people are dumbasses. I still think it's Tesla's fault for calling it fucking auto. Like we talked about this at the 10th episode is asinine that somebody can come out and market something as, hey, autopilot. And yes, I realize that the Tesla fanboy line of the autopilot in a plane works exactly like this in the car. It's a user helping feature, not a replacement for an actual pilot.
Well, I'm sure that's a great comfort to all of the trained pilots out there who have Teslas and actually understand that distinction.
Yes. Normal human beings hear autopilot and they think, oh, the plane flies itself. Perfect. I want that for my car.
Yes.
Car, take me to Portland, please.
Yeah. Okay. Electric cars, they seem cool.
I like my car. I wish it wouldn't text. I got to figure out how to turn off the texting. It's annoying. I wish I hadn't turned that on.
Yeah.
But yeah. This is the part of the show where we thank the 2,000, let's see, how many people? 2,363 wonderful listeners who support the Tech Pod and make it happen every month.
Yeah, goodness gracious. Thank you so much.
We've had a lot of new folks over the last couple of weeks, and it's awesome to see them integrating in the community that was already there. We opened up some new channels. We had to open up. People wanted a crypto channel this week, Brad.
I saw that you created the crypto channel.
I had mixed emotions about the crypto channel.
Okay, that makes me feel better because we didn't talk about it ahead of time, and I hung my head when I saw it. I'm hearing you say,
well, look, we also had a problem with people talking about eating people in the general chat. And I felt like that was discomforting for people who may not be aware of the fact that it's a now unfortunate and long running joke. So the crypto channels opt in, Brad.
Yeah. I didn't know you could do that. I guess I could opt in automatically as an admin of the server, but that's a cool Discord thing that you can have. Require people to do a thing before they see that channel.
Yeah, they don't have normal humans not going to know that either of those things are there. And now that problem is off to the side where we don't have to worry about it anymore.
That's all that matters.
Solve the problem.
Yeah, that's a neat thing. Thank you so much to everybody for supporting us. And also, I just want to say thank you to everybody already on the server for being so welcoming to new folks coming in.
Yeah.
They have cultivated a very nice, welcoming, warm, friendly culture for new folks to join, and it's really nice to see.
It's very pleasant. It always makes me happy when I check in and see what's going on. And as always, thank you to our executive producer tier patrons, the Bunny Fiend, Jacob Chappell, Twinkle Twinkie, and James Kemley. Thank you all so much.
Yes, thank you very much.
This is a listener supported show, Brad. This is, as of right now, this is your job. I don't know if that will remain the case, but
yes, Saturday morning, here we are recording. I had to tell my girlfriend, I got to go work. I know it seems like Saturday to you, but this is work for me now.
It's time to go to work.
That's right.
So you had a work change a couple of weeks ago. I've had a work change too.
Oh,
yes.
Tell me about this thing that you've definitely not told me about already. What's going on?
So a friend of mine reached out a few months ago and was like, "Hey, are you available for consulting? I want to talk to you about, communication, community stuff and things like that." And he started a game studio. So I'm working with Stray Bombay, working for Stray Bombay. It started out as like a consult thing, and now it's just my job, it turns out.
Cool.
So we're making a as yet unannounced video game. And I think that's all I can probably say.
Okay, that's fair.
Yeah, but I'm working with Chet Falasek and Kimberly Vole and some other awesome people up there. And
heck of a pedigree. Congratulations. I have avoided pumping you for info about the game, as curious as I am. I know
what game,
I know about as much as everybody else listening right now, but I'm very curious to see more.
Well, hopefully I can talk about
anything, I should say.
Yeah, hopefully I can talk about that in the future. But until then, that's what I'm doing now with my days. So if I'm around the Discord a little bit less during the day, that's probably why.
Oh, hey, I've got some time to kill.
Yeah, you're there.
So I've been on there quite a bit.
Look, it's really funny because as you were like leaving Giant Bomb, I was literally doing interviews with the team there to meet people and see if I wanted to come in full time and see if they wanted to have me in full time. So
yes, funny how life works out sometimes.
Yeah,
but, this should not affect this podcast at all.
Yeah, so that's like one of the things that is important to talk about is it doesn't affect the podcast. It doesn't affect my streams. I mean, it does affect them because I'm a little bit more tired now, but yeah, like everything's more or less the same. And I'm happy to talk about as much as obviously I'm not going to answer questions about games and stuff, but if people have questions, I'm happy to answer them in the Discord or on Twitter or wherever. So, but I wanted to let you all know first. So
exclusive.
And I'm really, I'm very excited to share more when the time is right.
Yeah, I'm excited to see it.
Yeah. So that's it for us this week, I guess. We'll be back next week with more Brad and Will made a tech pod.
You bet your sweet behind we will.
Behind. Bye, everybody.